Hi guys, it's Miss Debbie from the Appomattox Regional Library System. And today I have a super fun craft for you and a little mini art lesson. We're gonna learn about resist art. Now resist art is a super cool art technique where you put tape, or in some cases wax, on your canvas or your paper, and then you go over it with your medium. Now a medium is your paint, or your colored pencils, or your markers, or your crayons. It's really just a fancy word for whatever art supplies you're gonna use that day. Now you go over it with your medium, and then you take off the tape, or you wipe down the wax with a wet rag, and then you get a beautiful picture or a beautiful painting without having to be super duper careful while you color it. You still get your design, but without having to be super duper careful. I think it's a super fun art technique, and doing that, we're going to do an awesome craft today. We are going to use resist art to make name pictures. Now to do this craft, you're going to need tape and scissors and some paper. You can use super thick paper like cardstock or printer paper, but you have to be careful with the printer paper. If you're going to use printer paper, I recommend only using either crayons or markers or colored pencils, not the paint. Now you can be super fancy and use canvas, but like I said, just a thick cardstock will do just fine if you want to paint. All right, are we ready to go? Let's do it. For step one, what we're going to do is we're going to write our names on our paper with tape. Now parents, I recommend cutting little strips of tape and then cutting them in half widthwise. I do this because if you try to do it with the tape as thick as it normally is, you'll only be able to get about a 3-letter name on a standard sheet of paper. So I like to work with the skinny strips because it's easier and you can get a longer name on your paper. Now, if you have little kids, I recommend doing it for them, but if you have older kids, I think it's a good idea to let them do it themselves. It's a bit of a brain workout, and it's super fun. All right? It's time to do our letters, and I'm going to start out by saying I did color my tape, so that's why it's not sticking so well, but I wanted you to be able to see it. So now that you're seeing how I do my letters, I do little tiny pieces at a time to make my curves, and I do one piece at a time on the paper. Some people like to completely form their letters upside down and then stick it directly onto the paper. It's completely up to you how you'd like to do it, and you'll notice mine are a bit angular. I personally enjoy this look, but if you want super curved letters, you can always cut the curved pieces of your letters directly out of your tape, and then you'll have a nice curve to it. Be careful with your spacing. You don't want to go too far apart or too close together because you do want to have some space for the paint to go between your letters. And you want to be able to get your whole name on your piece of paper. All right, now we're moving on to step 2. Step 2, I'm going to show 2 different times, once with our paint and once with all our other crafting materials. Our markers and our colored pencils and our crayons. Now, the paint one I'm going to show first, and if you're using paint, you're probably also going to want to use either a paintbrush or a sponge. Parents, I recommend the sponge just because it's a much easier way of doing it. It's more controlled. And frankly, all you have to do is cut up a household sponge and you have the perfect implement for this craft. All right, let's get started. Now it's time to move on to our painting. And when I do my painting, I do like to gently dab over the letters just to make sure no paint gets inside the tape. And my youngest daughter, she did hers like we showed her, the dabbing, and then she did color it over again, just any way she wanted to. And I guess the extra pressure and the paint did keep the letters from getting messed up, because even though she went crazy over them, they still turned out perfectly. And you're going to want to cover your whole canvas. You'll notice now I'm filling in the entire sheet of paper, leaving no blank spaces. It just really makes the image pop and your letters look super crisp and super nice. Parents, an option if your child ends up having some letters that don't show up because of the lighter colors they use, you can always trace over the white spot with the black marker. And that does also look very crisp and very nice. All right, and we're just about done with this step. Now I'm going to do our next demonstration, and this one I'm just going to do 2 letters with each of the different mediums. And the first one is crayon, and you can color it any way you want to. Just make sure not to go super crazy and push up your tape. I personally like to do a little bit of an outline with my tape with the crayon just to make sure I'm getting right up against the tape. Now we're moving on to our colored pencil, and just like with our crayon, you just need to be gentle around the tape, but everywhere else you can go pretty crazy. Again, I like to just outline the letter because I think it does really give it a nice pop when you're using crayons and colored pencils. You can totally go over the tape with your crayon and colored pencil. It will not hurt. Moving on to our markers. You may want to be a bit more gentle with the tape with the marker, just because you don't want to get any bleed through with your tape and the marker. Because if you go over the tape, there is a very good chance you'll get a little bit of bleed through. I did go over the tape a little bit on mine, but it was just very light marks, so I didn't end up having any problems. All right, and we're done. All right, parents, now we're going to move on to step 3. This is going to be where we take the tape off our picture. Now, if you have little ones, I recommend doing this for them just because you have to be super careful when you do it so you don't tear your paper. But if you have older kids, I recommend letting them do it. Let them get messy. It's fun. All right, let's get to it. Now it's time to take the tape off of our painted painting. And this is the hardest one to do because it does make your paper wet, obviously. So if you wait till it's dry, it's a little bit easier. But sometimes our kids are impatient and they want to see their artwork right away. So you can totally do it wet. It's just a little bit harder. Now what you're going to want to do is put your nail under the edge of the painting, and you're going to want to pull it up gently until you can get a finger hold on it, and then continue gently pulling that away. With all 3 of our other mediums, the crayons, the colored pencils, and the markers, the process is the same. Just gently pull the tape up. It's much easier than the painted version because you can clearly see the tape and it hasn't been pressed down by paint. The paper is also not as delicate because it's never been wet. Thank you guys for joining me with this craft. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed making them. You can always use this technique with other designs, and I can't wait to see what you guys did. Thank you. Bye.